welcome. Tonight, no reason to complain. The president challenges members of the National Economic Council following their inauguration in Abuja, vows to sustain rejuvenation of the nation's economy. Director of Operations, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Karim Choko, steps in as acting chairman of the EFCC after suspension of Abdul Rashid Bawa. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu honors subpoena served on him by the PDP and its presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, asking him to present documents before the Presidential Election Petition Court.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's headline inflation rises to 22.41% in May, marking the fifth straight month of increase despite sustained hike in monetary policy rate.
On sports news tonight, Premier League fixes August the 11th for the start of the 2023-2024 season, with Manchester City facing newly promoted Burnley.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, 2 people killed as buildings partially demolished by the Kano State government collapses, while rummaging for leftover items in the structures.
And in international news from London, extremely fierce battles are raging in parts of Ukraine as Kyiv's forces continue their counter-offensive, according to the country's Deputy Defense Minister.
There's no room for complaints and excuses. Strong words from the president as he inaugurated the National Economic Council today, where he promised to sustain the rejuvenation of the nation's economy. Addressing members of the council, made of state governors, President Bola Tinubu challenged the council to join forces with his administration towards transforming the nation and stimulating serious growth. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Mizoke, also reports that the president met with former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, and other visitors at the villa.
Members of the National Economic Council, comprising the chairman, Vice President Kashim Shettima, 36 state governors, the acting governor of the central bank, and other top government officials converge at the council chamber minutes before the president Bola Tinubu arrives to inaugurate the council. This is his second official meeting with the governors after his election, and he's seeking their collaboration to sustain the progress that he has made.
This government will continue to transform our nation's fortunes and bring about unprecedented development through good governance. We are committed to sustainable initiatives and programs that will stimulate the rejuvenation of the economy without causing inflation. Collaboration is not a crime. Please let us do so.
The president subsequently inaugurates the council while reminding members of the expectations of Nigerians.
It is also evident that the task of growing our economy is quite enormous. But you and I ask for it, we campaign for it, we even dance for it, we beg for it. So we have no reason to complain. We must harness the growth potential of Nigeria, and you have the flexibility of using the local government to rapidly develop the infrastructure within the local government areas.
The president shortly after meets with Nigeria's former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar.
Nigeria, there is enough for everybody. So let us try to be each other's keeper and also put our own hands on deck to move the country forward. You know, this subsidy issue has been on and off and so on. But Mr. President has taken a decision to remove it, and I hope we'll all see how to help him to make sure that it succeeds.
For the second time, President Tinubu meets the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, who is accompanied by his deputy, Senator Barau Jibrin, in his office.
The Parliament, on resumption, will also lend our voice to what we have seen so far. He has taken the right steps. The stock market is rising, and a lot of people are very excited with the steps he has taken so far, and we are also very happy. And there is renewed hope, not just in terms of the economy, but in terms of the stability of the country.
More visitors arrived at State House, including the 14th Emir of Kano and former governor of the Central Bank, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. His visit is coming almost a week after the president suspended Mr. Godwin Emefiele as the governor of the Apex Bank.
I came to thank him for the steps he has taken to put this economy on course. As you know, many of the issues that we have been talking about, the subsidy that has caused a hemorrhage on the fiscus, the multiple exchange rate regimes, and so on, these are issues that I have personally been talking about for a long time. And I'm happy that on his very first day, he has addressed these issues, and the markets are happy. And it is important when the government does the right thing.
As the president's cabinet continues to take shape, expectations are also burgeoning that the president will address critical challenges, including power and education, among others contained in the 8 priority areas of his administration. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuki, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the president has named 8 of his special advisors. They are Mr. Dele Alake, who is the president's special advisor on special duties, communications and strategy. Former EFCC chairman, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, is special advisor on security, while Mr. Yao Darazo is the special advisor political and intergovernmental affairs. Others named are Mr. Wale Adu, who steps in as Special Advisor Monetary Policies, Mrs. Olu Vehijen, a Special Advisor on Energy, while Mr. Zacchaeus Adiriji is to advise the President on Revenue. Mr. John Wajumogo is the Special Advisor on Industry, Trade and Investment, and Dr. Salma Anis is Special Advisor Health. All appointments are with immediate effect. Just before it rounded off its session, the Senate of the 9th National Assembly gave approval to the request by the President for 20 special advisors. Staying on the issue of appointments, the Director of Operations of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Karim Chukul, has stepped in as acting chairman of the commission following the suspension of Mr. Abdul Rashid Bauer. In a statement, the EFCC explains that Mr. Chukul is a pioneer staff of the Commission and has extensive experience as an investigator with specialty in cybercrime and money laundering. His command appointments in the Commission include head of the Advanced Fraud and Cybercrime sections of the Lagos and Abuja Zonal Commands between 2011 and 2016, Pioneer Commander of the Uyo Zonal Command in 2017 and Commander of Port Harcourt Zonal Command in 2020. Mr. Chukul has also participated in several special operations with international law enforcement organizations. He is also an alumnus of the FBI National Academy, Quantico, European Center of Security Studies, Germany, and a fellow of the War College, Nigeria. The former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Dinkarlo, has been speaking on the suspension of the governor of the Central Bank and the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Rashid Bauer. While Professor Dinkarlo applauds the decision of President Tinubu on the suspension and investigation of Mr. Emefiele, he points out that since every new administration terminates the appointment of the chairman of the EFCC, there is the need to further look into some of the fundamental issues surrounding the office. Professor Dinkarlo was a guest on our political program, Politics Today.
Look, I have no sympathy for Godwin Emefiele. I quite genuinely and honestly believe that quite a good bit of what transpired under his tenure as CBN governor was criminal. You know, whatever fate befalls him within the legal process, I will not shed a tear for him. You see, I've got a problem here. Every EFCC chair, bar none, has come to grief. And so the question one has got to ask is it the job or is it the politics? But something is wrong. It cannot be that every chair of the EFCC since Nuhu Ribadu gets fired, and all we are focused on is the musical chairs and not the idea that something is fundamentally wrong. And so why would anyone want the job if you're guaranteed to be fired? If the country does not want to fight corruption properly or at all, or does not want anyone to do it, then let's scrap the position and scrap the institution. But the idea that whenever a new president comes in, they've got to fire or humiliate or terminate or exterminate the incumbent in the office of the chairperson of the EFCC is offensive in my view. There is something to me that just does not sit right about that. So in many ways, my perspective on MFLA is quite different from my perspective on Bauer. I'm not convinced that we are treating the position of the chair of the EFCC as it should be treated.
Let's go over to the Green Chamber, where the House of Representatives has rejected a motion to suspend the license allegedly granted to Dangote Refinery as sole importer of premium motor spirit, PMS. A member of the House had prayed the House to urge the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to suspend the license and expand the option to other capable importers, despite NNPCL's denial of the claim. However, the lawmakers voted against the motion. Meanwhile, the House also rejected a motion to address the migration of Nigerians to other countries in search of a better life. Our correspondent Terry Kumi has more.
It's the second plenary session of the 10th House of Representatives, and members are already firing on all cylinders. Despite the denial of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited that it did grant sole license to Alhaji Aliko Dangote, owner of the Dangote Refinery, to import premium motor spirit, a federal lawmaker calls for the suspension of the license for a review to accommodate all the petroleum marketers.
NNPC Limited yesterday issued import permit to Dangote Petrochemical as a sole importer of petroleum product to this country. Mr. Speaker, that is not what should have been, because there are other importers of this petroleum product over the years in this country, and they are doing wonderfully well. And they have employed so many Nigerians, and they have built so much infrastructure.
The motion is, however, rejected by a majority of the lawmakers when it's put to vote.
Those who are against you say nay. The nays have it.
Another motion urging the federal government to declare the migration of Nigerians to other countries in search of better life as a national emergency suffers same fate.
It borders on national pride when our young, bright minds leave the country in droves, convey an impression that Nigeria is a sinking ship that everyone is rushing to get out of. The House resolves to urge the federal government to convene a national summit with key stakeholders to effectively address the syndrome. The House resolves to declare a state of emergency on the factors that predispose young Nigerians to give up on Nigeria in preference for other nations.
Those who are against you say nay. The nays have it.
In the meantime, the House threw a motion on the need to address the lingering issue of gas flaring by oil and gas companies. It's asking the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency to provide the House with specified information on companies involved in flaring, to include amounts flared and penalty cost in the last decade, so that outstanding debts can be fully recovered. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu on a subpoena served on him by the PDP and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar to present documents before the Election Petition Court. That's in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. As a reminder of our top stories. No reason to complain. The president challenges members of the National Economic Council following their inauguration in Abuja, vows to sustain the rejuvenation of the nation's economy. Director of Operations, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Karim Chukul, steps in as acting chairman of the EFCC after suspension of Abdurrashid Bauer. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu on a subpoena served on him by the PDP and its presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, asking him to present documents before the Presidential Election Petition Court. Extremely fierce battles rage in parts of Ukraine as key forces continue their counter-offensive, according to the country's Deputy Defense Minister. One of the major contenders for the seat of the Senate President, Senator Abdulaziz Yari, says he felt betrayed at the outcome of Tuesday's election. However, he has moved on and pledges to work with the new Senate leadership. Speaking to journalists in Abuja, Senator Yari discloses that he was confident of the support of a good number of lawmakers elect before the election, but the situation turned around at the last minute. He says the 10th Senate has a huge task ahead of it, and lawmakers must work together to fulfill the mandate of their constituents.
Yes, I can say that there's a betrayal. That's the truth. Because as we're taking stock as a 3 a.m. Monday, Tuesday election, we took stock of over 76. But as usual, human being, we thought that we are going to get a pollout about 15, which will have a comfortable 61 to win the election. But it's become the reverse, which is only God knows what happened. So that one I feel betrayed, but life continues, and it's a cycle. As a Muslim, I believe in faith. God had decided who would be the president of the Senate 10th Assembly, and I have no reason not to accept what God had decided for us. I gave the Senate President assurance that we are going to work together as a team to protect that institution that we are today. And also, I had a lunch discussion with my people. 46 of us, but unfortunately about 49 are feared. So we are wondering from where 3 came from. So I told them that the task ahead of us, 1, to come together. 3, to support the leadership so that Nigeria can grow better.
We head to the Elections Petition Court, where the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Mr. Mahmood Yakubu, has honoured a subpoena served on him by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, asking him to present some documents before the Presidential Election Petition Court. Counsel to the petitioners, Mr. Chris Uche, informed the court that Professor Yakubu is represented by a deputy director in charge of certification and complaints, legal drafting and clearance department, Mrs. Moreni Keji Tairu. The former vice president and the PDP had subpoenaed the INEC chairman to tender some sensitive documents before the Presidential Election Petition Court.
It is a continuation of the hearing of the petitions filed by the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party seeking to overturn the election of President Bola Tinubu. Counsel to the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Chris Uche, who previously told the court that the chairman of INEC is evading service of a subpoena, informs the court that the chairman is represented in court by an official of the commission, Mrs. Moreni Keji Tairu. The INEC representative informs the court that she had 4 out of the 11 documents itemized in the subpoena dated May the 26th, 2023. She then presents the documents, which include result sheets from the 36 states and the FCT, and the final results sheet. Mrs. Tairu also tendered the certified true copy of the BVAS report in Rivers State and accreditation data from BVAS machines used across all states of the Federation. The INEC director further tendered the INEC form submitted to the Commission by President Bola Tinubu. Counsel to INEC and other respondents opposed the admissibility of the documents in evidence with a promise to adduce reasons while presenting their final written addresses. Earlier in the day, the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, tendered 18,088 blurred polling result sheets, among other documents, in continuation of the prosecution of their case before the Presidential Election Petition Court in Abuja. Counsel to the petitioners, Mr. Onyechi Ikpeazu, tendered the documents to the petitioner's 4th witness, Mr. Eric Ofedu, who is a professor of mathematics at the Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka. The petitioners also tendered a report of the witnesses' analysis of some election materials, a copy of a letter written to him by the LP dated February the 20th, 2023, engaging Professor Ofedu to help the party analyze data in respect of the February 25th presidential election, and a subpoena issued on him to attend court and produce the said documents. Counsel to INEC, Mr. Abubakar Mahmood, Mr. Wole Olanik Bekun, representing President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima, and Lateef Fagbemi for the All Progressives Congress APC, objected to the tendering of the majority of the documents, with a promise to adduce reasons for the objection at the final stage of their written addresses. Lawyers to the respondents expressed displeasure that the petitioners only served them the written statements of Professor Ofedu a few minutes before the court, arguing that they ought to have been served earlier to enable them study the statement for the purpose of cross-examination. The petitioners also called its fifth witness, Mr. Lumni Edevie, another subpoenaed witness who tendered a flash drive containing a video recording of a presentation by the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, at the Chatham House in London. The petitioners also called Mr. Samuel Oduton, a statistician who was cross-examined by the respondents' lawyers. Hearing of both petitions have been further adjourned to the 16th of June, 2023.
And now to Kwara State and the boat accident. The Director General, Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau, Mr. Akin Olateru, says 106 fatalities were recorded, while 144 people were rescued out of 250 passengers. Mr. Olateru stated this during a press briefing in Abuja, adding that the agency is currently undergoing investigation into the root cause of the accident. Meanwhile, the state governor has paid a visit to the area, while survivors and family members of victims have been narrating their ordeal.
The quest to get more information about the tragic boat mishap reported earlier this week in Kwara State takes us to Kpatigi, a town in Lafiaji Kpatigi local government area of the state. The journey to the town, 200 kilometers from Ilorin, the state capital, is 6 hours long, with nearly 4 hours out of this time spent on bad roads. The unfortunate boat accident happened on Monday, June the 12th at about 3 p.m. local time. The boat, ferrying mostly wedding guests, reportedly capsized around the River Niger axis 3 minutes after takeoff. According to reports, the boat, carrying about 250 passengers, broke into two as a result of excess weight of humans and luggage. Channels Television also gathered that the boat is very old and had been in use by the boat operators for years. About 4 villages, namely Pada, Ebu, Zakan, and Sampi, are all affected in the disaster. This survivor from the boat mishap narrates his ordeal.
It's like 2 minutes when we left Boti site. So the boat now collapsed. And we are about 200 and something people inside that boat.
Unfortunately for this elderly man, he lost his teenage son to the tragedy.
After ceremony,
they were on their way back from a wedding ceremony, and about 3 a.m., shortly after takeoff, the boat broke into two, throwing the people into the water. My son was among them. He was just 15 years old. It's very painful because he was a very hard-working young man, a tailor who supported me financially.
Accompanied by the traditional ruler in the community, the Esu Kwatigi, and some politicians, Governor Abdurrahman Abdurrazak is visiting to commiserate with the families of the victims.
We're deeply saddened at the event. Measures will be taking place. We'll be having discussions with NEWA to encourage them on enforcement of safety codes. And we also would be sending a team to Lagos State to see how the Lagos State laws work.
Families of the victims want the government to intervene by constructing a bridge across the river between Ebu and Zakon villages, as this would be the permanent solution to constant boat mishaps in the local government area.
We have more stories from our Abuja studios. Here's Linda Kigwe. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Millicent. Now, staying with states in the northern part of the country, The ongoing demolition of structures in Kano City by the state government appears to be raising more dust. This comes as 2 persons have been killed as part of 2 buildings partially demolished, collapsed in 2 locations, with the other people suspected trapped under the rubble. The victims were said to have gone into the buildings to pick leftover items. Our correspondent Chidi reports that the Kano State government has ordered the police to take over the building sites.
The demolition of alleged illegal structures in Kano metropolis is taking a different turn as part of some untouched structures have collapsed. Unfortunately, persons scavenging from the rubble whenever the bulldozers stop work are now casualties. This is Daula Hotel, one of the buildings that was demolished by the government of Abba Kabir Yusuf here in Kano State, northwest Nigeria. You can see behind me rescue operations are going on as the building collapsed while some people were trying to get something out of the rubbles. Eyewitnesses who were part of the first responders give an account of the incident at the Daula Hotel.
I just saw the building collapse. So actually I quickly rushed and see what happened there. So I just saw one of the boys that the building collapsed them. We quickly take him to outside so that he will get a relief.
When the building collapsed, many people were under it trying to get air roads. Some escaped with injuries, but we had to rescue others who were trapped. A similar incident occurred at the Eid ground where multiple plazas were demolished. The building collapsed with people under it. I saw 2 corpses when the rescue team was digging to check for the trapped victims. The police commissioner who visits the site says they have so far arrested 106 suspects.
The state government have not declared this place a place where anybody can come and take anything. That was why in the course of our patrols, we were able to arrest a number of suspects, up to 106, which I'm sure all of them are now standing trial in various courts in the state.
The Kano State government also gives an update on the incident while ordering the police to take over the sites to avoid further occurrence.
Unfortunately, it's not well because still here we had a collapse because of the works of scavengers again. Had it been they are out of sight, they are not operating the way they would, casualties like this wouldn't have happened, incidences like this wouldn't have happened. As directed by His Excellency, the Executive Governor, Engineer Abba Kabir Yusuf, that the Commissioner of Police should handle all the security as I explained it earlier, which they are doing their best.
Despite these incidents, there is no sign that the Kano State government would stand down in the demolition of alleged illegal structures in the state. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
In other stories, the proliferation of misinformation, disinformation, outright fake news and hate speech in the digital space is causing grave global harm. The UN resident coordinator, Mr. Matthias Schmale, told a media conference on hate speech organized by the National Human Rights Commission in Abuja that this has only succeeded in fueling conflicts and is threatening democracies and human rights. He called for the regulation of the digital space.
The proliferation of misinformation, fake news, disinformation, and hate speech in the digital space is causing grave global harm right now. It is fueling conflict, death, and destruction, again, right now. Digital platforms are sadly being misused to subvert science and spread disinformation and hate to billions of people. While traditional media, like newspapers, can also be sources of hate speech and other means of information ecosystem pollution, it seems to us that the digital space provides more velocity, volume, and virality of this hate messaging. And one of the reasons is the anonymity that digital platforms allow. Media, and of course we're not just speaking about Nigeria, but the entire world, are critical actors in society, often referred to, as you know, as the fourth estate. For better or for worse, media in many contexts shape people's perceptions around issues and mindsets. And as shapers of public opinion, the media have a special responsibility to promote understanding among communities and mutual respect for different beliefs and traditions.
To the fight against terror, the military says that troops of Operation Hadinkai have neutralized at least 20 Boko Haram terrorists and rescued about 15 persons within the last 2 weeks. According to the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Damadami, a total of 743 members of the terrorist group and their families surrendered, while the sum of 11 million naira was also recovered in the period under review. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali-Baba, has directed the sealing of all 17 local government council secretariats in Plateau State, north-central Nigeria. This action, according to the IGP, is to avoid possible threats to lives and properties in the local government councils as a result of leadership tussle following the suspension of elected chairmen and councillors by the state government. Crisis began to brew following the appointment of Transition Management Committee chairman in spite of a court order restraining the Plateau State government from tampering with the democratic structures at the local government level, pending the hearing of a substantive suit filed by the aggrieved chairman. Meanwhile, the Plateau State House of Assembly has faulted the Inspector General of Police order, saying that the IGP must have been misinformed on the situation, which does not warrant the sealing of the secretariats.
Our position is properly informed that the IG doesn't reside in Plateau State. It shows that he has been misinformed by the state commissioner who is his representative here, because it is also pertinent to also inform the press that the newly sworn in transition committee chairmen of the 17 local government in the state went to their respective offices with mammoth welcome by their own electorate, by the citizens in their respective local governments. Only few had issues, and we thought that it will be wise that the police will invite even the sacked local government chairmen in order to advise them to toe the line of dignity by approaching the courts to seek redress, rather than to cause confusion and chaos here and there. So we want to use this medium to call on the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to call on the Inspector General of Police to order, to, as a matter of public importance and urgency, to order him to revisit his initial order by giving another order for the immediate reopening of all the 17 state local government secretariats in Plateau State for the smooth running of local governments in the state. And on such note, we want to also draw the attention of the citizens of Plateau State that they should remain calm, they should be peaceful, as this matter will be sorted out amicably.
In Benin State, Governor Hyacinth Alia has read the Riots Act to local government chairmen, urging those unable to maintain the peace to resign. He gave this charge at his first meeting with the 23 chairmen elected on the platform of the People's Democratic Party. The governor told them he's not thinking of dissolving any councils, but wants a situation where all of them work with him to ensure peace and security for the people of Benin State.
Another communal clash on Wednesday night has resulted in the loss of at least 2 lives in Bayongo, Gwe East local government area of Benue State. Now, houses and business premises are bare, residents in distress. The local government chairman gives details on what happened.
All I hear about this is more of a communal clash because of land disputes. They've taken the case to court. I think the court hearings are still on. But why they were asking them to allow their casualties and, should I say, the dead ones that have been deposited in a mortuary, for peace to reign, allow them to remain there while they settle in court first. The other side have refused and even gone to retrieve their corpses and bury.
One communal clash too many, Governor Hyacinth Alia summons the 23 local government chairmen to a meeting in Makurdi.
Take the security at the local government very, very serious.
Straight away, he reminds the chairman of the need to find avenues to end communal clashes or resign. He tells them he is not dissolving any council simply because they are members of the opposition.
Anything happens at some local government, so far I've witnessed in Oju. I had to go looking for the chairman of Oju local government. I had to ask people to give me the phone number of the chairman of Gwe East local government. That's a huge gulf. There's a disconnect. I'm not a governor for APC. You are the serving local government chairman, not of PDP. Let this register on your mind and your psyche. So you cannot mess up with the responsibility that is given you.
The chairman notes the admonition about communal clashes and applaud the governor for not towing the line of some other governors.
It is speculation that they are going to drop us, but today is giving us more tags to go and function more than ever before. And the issue of insecurity, by the grace of God, he has said it all, that he don't want any lapses anywhere. We are going to, as Aragon, going to work with all the government apparatus, all the security apparatus. We're going to work with them to make sure we don't leave any stone unturned on issue on security.
Following days will say a lot about the effectiveness of this approach towards curbing communal clashes in and around Benue State.
That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Linda. And moving on to other stories now. Residents of Aleto town in Eleme Council in River State, they're calling for help to mitigate the oil spill ravaging their community. During a meeting with their traditional ruler, the residents lamented how the spill is affecting every area of their life. As part of the effort, the community has set up a 10-man committee to investigate the spill and how to end it.
Following the flow of gallons of crude from a multinational facility in Aleto in Eleme local government area of River State, members of the Edemaku community are gathered in the palace of the traditional ruler, His Royal Highness Philip Obele, who's inaugurating a 10-man committee to interface with Shell Petroleum Development Company, owners of the wellhead from where the oil spill started. While the battle to contain the spill into the Okulu River rages on, the effects are still visible as aquatic life and the livelihood of communities on the river banks have been impacted. An environmentalist who is also the co-chairman of the committee rules out sabotage.
This particular incident, the owners of the facility had even worked on that point some months ago, and they're also aware that we were part of supervising that maintenance, that repair works they did. So there is nothing like human interference on the facility. It is obvious and evident that there was some poor welding work done. You know, you're dealing with materials.
The community's lawyer expresses sadness over the development.
Shell should learn. It is not every time we'll come and see oil spillage arising from a facility failure and all that. If they are periodically servicing their equipments and warehouses and all that, we won't be experiencing that kind of a thing. Remediation, is it effective? It takes time, and it pains me that it's still happening despite the technological developments and experiences of the recent.
Meanwhile, the Director General of the National Oil Spill Detection Response Agency, NOSDRA, Mr. Idris Musa, in a telephone interview with Channels Television, says the joint investigation visit are yet to determine the cause of the spill, but gives an assurance that containment of the spill and the mapping out of the area of impact is going on with government agencies actively involved.
The cause of the spill is still not determined yet. Today, activities cover two things, essentially.
essentially two things. One, containment of the spill to avoid further spread, and then mapping out the area that is impacted so far.
Whatever the efforts are, what residents of Aleto community want is the stoppage of the spill and the cleanup of the impact already recorded.
The Norwegian Investment Fund for Developing Countries, Norfund, has expressed its desire to increase its investment portfolio in the Nigerian market. Norfund, which has a mandate to assist in developing sustainable businesses and industries in developing countries, is currently operating in 3 continents: Central America, Southeast Asia, and Africa.
Norfund, the Norwegian Investment Fund for Developing Countries, is an active investor assisting in building businesses in the private sector to help drive sustainable growth. And this forum is to spotlight Norfund's desire to increase its investment portfolio in Nigeria, a country of key importance to the fund.
It's about all of you present now in this room. It's the whole ecosystem that can really make us succeed in really making Nigeria and maybe the key country that we do invest in here in Africa. That would be fantastic.
Renewable energy, financial inclusion, green infrastructure and scalable enterprises in agriculture and manufacturing are the key investment areas for Norfund, and which also influence the fund's decision on the type of companies to invest in.
What do we bring to the companies and partners we invest in? I'd like to say, first of all, we bring patient capital, just by nature of the capital we have and the fact that it's essentially one investor, Norway's Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Nigeria is Norway's most important market on the African continent. Our sector focus is well aligned with Norfund's investment mandate, and we are especially happy that 2 great investments will be announced here today in the agribusiness and recycling sector.
As part of the fund's commitment to Nigeria, 2 investment deals worth $12 million and $2 million are signed with OH Ecosystems and Recyclers. The forum ends with a panel session on creating value in challenging markets with companies that have benefited from Norfund.
Nigeria is a huge market. So if you think of the West African region and how we can drive development through investments in the private sector all across Nigeria, I don't think there's any single country where we expect to see as many investable businesses for us, just based on scale.
What we get back when we invest is if we create jobs and we create sustainable businesses, sustainable when it comes to financial, social, environmental, then that is really how we measure our success.
Norfund is owned and funded by the Norwegian government as a tool for strengthening the private sector in developing countries, driving development and reducing poverty.
Time for business news now. Here's Melinda Kilami. Many thanks, Millicent. Welcome to Business News. Nigeria's annual inflation rate rose to 22.41% in May from 22.22% in April, and that's according to the latest inflation numbers released by the National Bureau of Statistics. The figure, which represents a 0.19% month-on-month increase, marks the 5th consecutive month inflation has risen in the country, despite the sustained hike by the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee in an attempt to reduce the pressure. Major highlights of the data show that food inflation rate jumped to 24.82% last month due to higher price of basic food items, while core inflation climbed to 20.06% due to rising cost of transportation, energy products and services. At the same time, urban inflation rate rose to 23.74%, while rural inflation was higher at 21.19% in May. Economic analysts at Cordros and Financial Derivatives Company forecast June inflation to be within the range of 24 to 25%, largely due to the impact of fuel subsidy removal. With the central bank's
directive to deposit money banks to remove the rate cap on the naira at the official investors and exporters window of the foreign exchange market, experts and economists have been reacting to this development. One is from Mr. Ayodeji Ebo, MD, Optimus by AfriInvest. He believes there will be short-term shocks, but consistent supply of the dollar to the market is key for long-term benefits. He made a comment on our Business Morning program. The European Central Bank, ECB, has raised interest rates for the 8th consecutive time as it battles high inflation. The ECB hiked rates by 25 basis points to a 22-year high of 3.5%, signaling further policy tightening. Meanwhile, the Central Bank's Governing Council says future decisions will ensure that key ECB rate interests will be brought to restrictive levels in order to achieve the 2% medium-term target. The domestic equities market records its first loss this week after having hit the 60,000 level at intraday. Will Ibong has the details.
Welcome to the Stock Market Report. It's been 2 days of phenomenal gains at the NGX, so you know what time it is. Profit taking. The market recorded its first negative close today as the index dropped by 1.32%. As investors, took profit on stocks, it's highly expected that we'll begin to see some correction in the market. However, it's not all gloom, as some stocks saw some appreciation in their share prices. MRS, Transcorp Hotels, and Total Energies all recorded gains. They were top 3 on the leaderboard today. Their share prices rose by 10% each today. Now, the gains in MRS and Total Energies further lifted the oil and gas index by over 12%. We do see that pullback, however, in the banking counter, down today by 4.16%. It was up yesterday by over 26%. Now, definitely, there are some stocks that got the short end of the stick. Negative market breadth today, we're seeing 36 stocks gaining against 39 losers. And that could mean more sell-offs ahead, maybe. Also, not much reaction from the inflation data that was released today. Headline CPI came out at 22.41% in May. Investors are probably watching out for the next MPR rates and the third quarter earnings report. And that's the stock market reports for today. I'm Will Ibong.
That's Business News. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Melinda. And now to around the world. In 5, Conservative MPs are divided over approval of a report condemning former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson for misleading Parliament over COVID-19 lockdown rule-breaking. The former Prime Minister has branded the Privileges Committee's findings as deranged, and his loyal supporters are set to vote against it Monday, June the 19th, which coincidentally is Mr. Johnson's 59th birthday. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international stories.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Extremely fierce battles are raging in parts of Ukraine as Kyiv's forces continue their counter-offensive. That's according to the country's Deputy Defense Minister. Hanna Malia said that Ukrainian forces had managed to advance near Bakhmut in the east and Zaporizhia in the south. Here, a Ukrainian brigade assaulting Russian positions near Bakhmut. But she conceded Russian forces were mounting a stiff defense in some areas. Her comments come after another night of Russian missile and drone strikes on cities across Ukraine. It comes as NATO defense ministers met in Brussels to discuss military support for Ukraine and security guarantees while debating the long-term future of Ukraine within the alliance.
We will continue to provide Ukraine with the urgent capabilities that it needs to meet this moment, as well as what it needs to keep itself secure for the long term from Russian aggression. And make no mistake, we will stand with Ukraine for the long haul.
Survivors have suggested as many as 750 people may have packed onto the boat carrying migrants which sank off southern Greece. At least 78 people have died and more than 100 have been rescued after the fishing boat sank, with reports of 100 children in the hold. Greece says it is one of the biggest ever migrant tragedies and has declared 3 days of mourning. Authorities say their offers of aid were refused, but they are facing claims of not doing enough to help. The long-anticipated report by MPs into whether Boris Johnson misled Parliament over COVID lockdown parties in Number 10 has been released.
Is this the end, Mr. Johnson? Have you run out of road?
Amongst several findings, it says Johnson deliberately misled the Commons about what he knew about gatherings. He misled the Privileges Committee whilst they were carrying out their duties. He was also complicit in a campaign of abuse against the MPs investigating him. A Commons ban of 90 days would have been recommended if Mr. Johnson hadn't stepped down as an MP last week. Several thousand South Korean and US troops have taken part in joint live-fire exercises in a show of force after North Korea's failed attempt last month to launch a spy satellite. A total of 2,500 troops took part in the drills in Pokon, northeast of Seoul. Supported by cutting-edge military assets, including South Korean F-35 fighters and K-9 self-propelled howitzers, and US F-16 jets and Grey Eagle drones. The drills, overseen by South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, are also being held to mark the 70th anniversary of the alliance between the two nations and the 75th anniversary of the founding of the South Korean military. A mummy that is some 3,000 years old has been unearthed near the Peruvian capital of Lima. Students from San Marcos University and researchers initially found remains of its hair and a skull in a cotton bundle during excavation. Further work in the central Rimac Valley later unveiled the rest of the mummy. Archaeologists have since unearthed other objects buried with the body, such as bottlenecks, corn, cocoa leaves and seeds. The mummy is believed to be from the Manche culture, which developed in the valleys of Lima between 1500 and 1000 BC. And a brand new animated television series focusing on environmental issues has premiered in Islamabad, aiming to make a positive environmental impact on Pakistan. The series, which stars a pair of teenage superhero siblings who fight villains to save Earth, aims to raise awareness of key environmental challenges in the South Asian country. The show's creator said the need to take charge and make changes to improve Pakistan's environmental situation inspired the show's conception.
These are serious issues we're facing in Pakistan when it comes to the environment, and it can only be changed by us taking a charge and making those changes. Of course, there are bigger issues like climate change, which needs to be addressed globally. But some of the local environment issues, we can definitely, whether it comes to tree plantation, concerns about deforestation, plastic waste is a huge issue, especially in the tourist areas. And apart from that, there's air pollution issues that we can take a stand to make a difference.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon, and welcome to sports. Super Eagles forward Victor Osimhen says the team will not underrate the Leon Stars of Sierra Leone in Sunday's Africa Cup of Nations qualifier in Monrovia, Liberia. Osimhen believes the only way to win the fans back is to qualify for the Nations Cup holding in Cote d'Ivoire in January next year.
The game on Sunday is a huge one for us. We cannot write off Sierra Leone because we saw what Guinea-Bissau did to us in Abuja. They are also a good group. Sierra Leone is also a good group. They have quality individual players that can execute the job for them. But just like them, also we have great team. We have great players individually, collectively. We are good. The coach is also good with good strategy, and we want to play for Nigerians. We want to win our fans back. This is the most important thing for us because without the fans, I don't think we can really do so well.
Now, season treble winners Manchester City will face a reunion with Vincent Kompany's newly promoted Burnley on August 11th as the 2023-2024 Premier League season kicks off. The game is the first installment of a bumper weekend opening as Arsenal will host Nottingham Forest. West Ham travel to Bournemouth, while Luton Town travel to Brighton for their first Premier League game, amongst other interesting fixtures right here, as you can see on my screen. Let's go to other league now. Real Madrid has unveiled English midfielder Jude Bellingham earlier today after signing the British talent from Borussia Dortmund for 6 years. Bellingham says his aim at his new club is to learn and win trophies. He joined Dortmund from Benin State in 2020 for £25 million, becoming the most expensive 17-year-old in football history. And the Vice President of the International Table Tennis Federation, Waheed Oshodi, is impressed with the number of high-profile players at the WTT Contender Series in Lagos. He believes the competition provides an opportunity for African players to compete among the best in the world.
The only way you can improve is to play against better people, to see how the best players prepare, how they play, and that's what we've tried to do here. 5 players from the world's top 20, training, practicing with our own African players here, and we're very hopeful that this would be another impactful tournament on our players. We've had to make a lot of concessions to bring in players from Africa here because the truth about it is that participating is expensive. Africa still has that problem, but we're very happy to see, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, these are strong playing nations in Africa, and we're happy to see them here. Of course, we know the Egyptians always at the top of the event. They will be challenging in the women's event as well. So this is what we need to do. We need to continue along this line to improve our players.
And as it on sports, Millicent, I'm sure you're excited to see that the Premiership will be coming back pretty soon. It's back to you.
You can say that again, Jeffrey. And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu today said elected officials have no reason to complain and vowed to sustain the rejuvenation of the nation's economy as he inaugurated the National Economic Council. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu today honored the subpoena served on him by the PDP and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, asking him to present documents before the Presidential Election Petition Court. And that's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.